Brought to you by Westside Decorating Center, 5789 State Street in Saginaw, with everything you need for home decorating. You'll find it at Westside Decorating Center. And a good morning to you. Nice to have you with us. And with us today is State Representative Amos O'Neill. Amos, good morning to you.
Good morning, Art. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for chiming in with us today.
Yeah.
Let's see. Are we any closer to a state budget?
Well, I think we're closer than we were in terms of, getting just the initial budget out of the House. And, that's the beginning stages for all of us. When you look at budgets, you get it out the House, get it out the Senate, then you start the negotiations, and then, you come to some consensus, package it up, send it up to the governor, and then she does her thing. So we'll see what happens. We go back tomorrow for session, and so I anticipate hopefully some movement and some conversations going on around the budget in terms of, we got to be big boys and girls, in this whole process. In every budget, you're not going to always get what you want. And so that's where negotiation comes in. And so, and the citizens of this great state depend on us just to be that way in terms of, let's sit down like, adults and have a conversation.
So let's pick apart a couple of things. Education, how far apart are you, do you think, between the House and the Senate?
Well, I don't think there's too many, dividing, I would say, mountain distance between the two. I think it's just the, where's the money coming from, what's going to be cut, because in terms of, for example, per pupil funding, I think we're pretty locked up and barrel in terms of per pupil funding. I know there's some discussion on the, what do you call those? I always get tongue-tied on those. Some adjustments in terms of how to use the money for special programs, at-risk programs, and things like that.
Yeah.
Categoricals.
Okay.
Categoricals. That area in terms of categoricals. Do you put it all in one pot? Or do you separate it out for specific use? I think there's some discussion and some differences on that, but I don't think that's a deal breaker. The budget for the education budget is pretty comprehensive. There's so many various line items and categories that you got to really be methodic about it and thoughtful and listen to. The experts, we have meetings with our superintendents every month, all of us are representatives in the area. And we also reach out to, just our district superintendents to get an idea. What are you thinking? How do you feel about what you're hearing? And so that's kind of been back and forth. But I think for the sake of budgets for the districts, we should have had that done. That's one of the first things we always try to do for the school districts to allow them to set their budgets for the entire year. Staffing ratios, different categories in terms of where the funding's going to go, and so they can really make those decisions for our kids.
Yeah, because right now, the schools are operating in the they're in the blind, really. They don't know what their money's going to be.
Exactly.
Let's talk about
optimistic. I'm optimistic. We gotta do the work. It's a process, and no one. I don't believe anybody wants to not do the work that's necessary for these budgets to be done. I think again, we have to be big boys and big girls. We have to be adults. We have to get in the room. We have to talk through the process. As it's been established for decades, ongoing in terms of how you get the budget done. It's a process, and so when you eliminate certain areas of that process, then you have what we have today. And so this is not a time for us to, allow politics to get in the way, because people are depending on these budgets to operate the various sectors in our industries. And, you look at business, you look at opportunities. We lost a major opportunity in Mundy Township for, reasons that decisions were made based on what, those business owners thought. And so, you got to think about the climate. I heard you talk earlier about the Dow and semiconductor and the jobs that are available, et cetera. We are on a turning point here in our region, I think, Art. And, you think about us needing to fill 1,200 jobs. Okay, you think about that. And there's so many opportunities for, supporting early childhood education for these families that are moving into our area. So there are a lot of moving parts, is what I'm saying.
One of the things that's been discussed over and over again, the Republicans have already come out in the House with a road funding plan, yet to hear from the Senate. Where do you think it's going to end up?
Well, I don't think there's no dispute that we all want our local roads repaired. I think some of the conversation boils around, why haven't we done this before? Why haven't we put in I know we talked about the tax for the gas and, the funding structure that, that's really obsolete in terms of how we fund our local roads now. I know our road commissions they're doing a yeoman's job with the resources that they have for the whole region. And so I think the fact that we're doing it right now all at once, I think that just in general, it creates some consternation for folks, on both sides. But we all want the roads. We want the roads package. I can say that confidently. But how you get there? You're talking about $3 billion. $3 billion got to come from somewhere out the budget. And so, and this version of our House budget, there are some major cuts. In terms of from the governor's rec, and then also from the Senate's recommendation in terms of resources being cut from some very, very important areas. And so how does that work as you move forward to talk about these budgets categories? It's going to be a give and take, but we all want our local roads fixed. The governor's been working on the state highways, et cetera. But our local roads, when you drive, from your job and go down some just residential, just regular areas, you're hitting bumps and things like that across the whole entire state. So that's something we got to do. But how you get it done is the sausage making.
All right, hang on. I got to take a break, and we'll be back. We're talking to State Representative Amos O'Neill. More ahead.
Took a little while to get there, but she got there. So it's all out there for folks to, that have been wanting it done. Now it's done. So what's the next step for folks?
And when is that election? Do you know offhand?
Well, based on the information she put out, February 3rd, and then May the 5th, I think that's the information that's out there. So the special and the general, February 3rd special, May the 5th, the general election for that spot.
Well, everybody will be happy. We have representation finally.
Right.
Absolutely. So what else is happening that's on your calendar that's important coming up?
Well, the first priority for us now is to get this budget out. That's the most important thing for all of us now. It does any of us any good for the government to shut down, and there's been just murmuring about that. And I'm sure you've heard and seen just some of the news articles on that, but no one wins when that happens. There's so many, as I said earlier, there's so many folks depending on us to get this done, and rightfully so. That's what we're supposed to do. And so for that to happen, it's just like, starting a cold car in the winter. If you don't turn it on early enough to get going, and winter's coming. So I'm using this analogy. It takes a little while for that engine to warm up. So to have a stop of government, for wherever they are, there's always a startup. It's going to take some time to get things back online. And who wants that? Nobody. I know I don't.
Yeah. Will we be able to avoid it is the question.
Yeah, I think so. Again, being adults, let's get in the room and talk these things through. And as I said, no one always gets what they want, and that's negotiations. And I think this is very important, for you listening to all this to understand, and I'm sure they do, that whether you're a Democrat or Republican, and a lot of times I'm in places and I talk and I share my opinion on things that I'm asked, and they say at the end of the session or end of the meeting, they'll come up to me and whisper, "Hey, what are you?" And I'll just smile. And I said, and I'll tell them, but that's interesting. That I get that a lot. They say, what are you? And I said, well, I'll tell them I'm a Democrat. They say, wow, you don't seem like a Democrat. I mean, you're open to views. You listen, and you make decisions that you wouldn't think a typical Democrat would make. I think, and I take that as a compliment, Art, because when we have people issues. There are people issues, and I try not to let, that partisan politics get in the way of my decisions. And so I think that's what's important when you talk about budgets. You got to get in a room and understand that there are going to be some different philosophical views and political views, but you got to think about the people of Michigan. You got to think about the schools. You got to think about the businesses. You got to think about all the opportunities we're trying to, and sit in the horn, my friend. What we always talking about, growing our community, And, and how do we do that? There's several ways to do that. And he's laid it out very, very articulately in terms of how do we do that. I support that initiative. And so, decisions are made based on the projection of our community. In my background, starting from local government, county government, and working with the business community, as long as I have, it is very easy for me to make decisions that I make because I understand the longevity and the projection of the region, not just Saginaw now. I'm talking about the region, the Great Lakes Bay region. We changed our name for that purpose. So when businesses look at our area, they look at us in totality. Therewithal, we have the Dow, we have solar, you have all these industries that are coming to our region based on how we prepare ourselves to be open and willing and opportunities for business.
I've said that I can see the Great Lakes Bay region being the leader in growth in the state. Look at Corning coming in with $1.5 billion, Hemlock Semiconductor expanding, SK Siltron and Bay and many others. We should be leading the state, shouldn't we?
We are in the top 5. I can say that confidently in terms of what we've done in the last, 3 to 4 years, and even prior to that, in terms of putting ourselves in a position to control our destiny. You remember the scenarios all of us saw up and down I-75 and other areas, when we had lots and lots full of vehicles just sitting there, waiting on chips. Okay, and so we said, oh boy, that's not a good scenario for us to have our fate in the hands of someone else. It just shut us down. And so now, fast forward to today, we're positioning ourselves, as I said, we're in the top 5 in terms of our capacity of chip manufacturing and wafer manufacturing, as those businesses you just mentioned are part of that. And all those businesses are in the Great Lakes Bay region. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so we're still optimistic about the Mundy Township facility in terms of potentially getting something bigger and better. And so that's another opportunity we want to keep our fingers crossed on. But we position ourselves for a region to be attractive. And then just go locally. You think about this, the medical diamond. Now, this has been a few years back. We were able to secure funds to get the initial start going. Doc Shaheen and his team, working with our business community, our chamber, and our Commodore Council, we're poised and ready to really re-energize our region, and that says a lot for us locally, statewide, and then being seen as a national hub for business. So in that sense, you gotta, you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And that analogy is used in so many ways. There's some things we got to improve on, sure. But right now, we're at a turning point in Saginaw Bay and Midland in terms of how we look for the whole world. The world market is global. Okay, so we gotta do business with folks around the world, and so we have to think. And one thing I really appreciate my education from Northwood University. I got a global perspective, and I tell people that all the time. So I think globally because of what I've learned in terms of my business degree from Northwood University here in our Great Lakes Bay region. We got to always think globally. And that's why it's important that we continue to work with Canada, our border partner. I'm a part of the Council of State Government. I've been a part of that for several years. And on the Midwest Canadian Relations Committee, where we talk, we communicate with our colleagues on the other side. We communicate with national leaders from around the country to talk about, what's working for you. What are some barriers or some inhibiting factors that we can consider? It's very important as leaders that you talk to other folks, because you might find out, hey, you don't really have to recreate the wheel. You may have to tweak some things, but that's why, being adults, you got to get in the room with folks who are different of opinions that they have and talk through some things to work together for the good of where you are.
Well, speaking of that, tariffs and talking to Canada, did the tone change when the tariff discussion started coming about?
Oh, definitely. We met with leaders. I know I sat in probably a half a dozen meetings with our Canadian officials in Detroit. Senator Victory was a part of some of those meetings. I know Senator Horn's been talking to some folks. They were very concerned about it. They're still concerned about it right now. But having those relationships that we have with them, that they can talk to representatives and senators and in a congenial way, in a way that they can, share their concerns and we can take it back to our leadership. That's very important. Relationships are very, very important. We have that. And so we got to maintain those conversations with our colleagues across the river there. You got the Gordie Howe Bridge now. That was paid for by the Canadian government, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have, so we have two bridges across our borders. They're our number one trading partner, right, economically, in so many ways. And so we have to really work with our partners in a way that is not going to put them in a sort of a bind in terms of their ability, to do business with us and others around the world. Okay, and so we got to be smart about it. So I think it's lessened the tension, but the tension is still there.
Yeah. All right, hang on. We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We are chatting with State Representative Amos O'Neill. More ahead.
Looking for a fun getaway without...
If the budget were, let's say, somehow passed this week, both sides come together, everything's approved, the governor signs on it, so now we have a budget in place. What's the next biggest thing the state has to face after the budget?
Well, the next biggest thing after that, I think, we have to really look at how are we going to make those adjustments from those federal cuts. We're doing that now, but locally, we look at our local hospitals. Our local hospitals have been cut. Our local health facilities have been cut, and we're you look at we got food deserts, we got health issues. Those are just basic subsistence needs. There's not top tier. These are low hanging fruits. So COVID showed us a whole lot. We got to take care of health, and I was very fortunate to make sure our local health was funded. We're funded at the maximum level that they were supposed to be by statute. And, health delivery, county health department, you think about that. We're getting ready to build one of the state-of-the-art facilities that includes our local health department through the Medical Diamond. Think about this. Now, if our ability to provide services are impeded, does that go well with our initiatives to build just a life transforming platform on the river in our region. And also to add to that, everything north of us in terms of, rural areas, et cetera, we provide health facility services to the majority of folks north of us. So those are things we got to, as a society, and I think this is just my personal view. I think there are certain things we have to take care of. We have to take care of the health needs of our community in a really robust way in terms of reasonable, sound practices, et cetera. We got some of the best facilities in Michigan right here in our community. Covenant, my Michigan local health department, and then Great Lakes Bay Regional Health Facility right here. So we got to figure out how do we want to look as a society, not only the Great Lakes Bay region, but as the state of Michigan in terms of how we take care of our people health-wise. If you don't have the health, you can't do anything else. You talk about jobs and recruiting talent and keeping talent, as Senator Horn talks about. Basic health is the foundation of everything that we do. So we got to figure out how we're gonna maintain this, because I know our local health departments, I talk to them regularly. They're grappling with some deficits, cuts from the federal government, in which we're trying to backfill with the state, which is impossible. So those are some things we're gonna have to come to grips with. You will hear more about it after we sign and adopt this budget, because you're in the community. You talk to the same stakeholders I talk to. If you haven't heard, you're going to hear more. And so, it's going to be some tough decisions we're going to have to make, not only locally but statewide in terms of, like rural areas.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those facilities in a rural area they're going to go out of business. They're going to shut doors if they haven't already done it. And so, I'm not giving you gloom and doom. I'm giving you facts.
Right.
The potential impact of some of these decisions that have been made at the federal level that's going to trickle down the hill locally to us, and our communities are already, struggling with some major issues, with health and food, et cetera, et cetera. So that's going to be the topic of discussion after this budget's done.
One of the areas in healthcare that seems to have taken it on the chin in the last number of years, but it's a forefront issue, is mental health. Have we done anything, or will we do anything to try and restore some funding to mental health services?
Well, we here you go. You restore it and you cut. You restore it. You take 2 steps forward. You take 3 steps back. And so, mental health. We're trying to rebound from, decades and decades of lack of support. And so now, if you have no access to basic health care services, what's going to happen? Your emergency rooms are going to be filled. They're going to be overburdened with just folks coming in for basic need care. And so that just think about that ripple effect there. We're already working and grappling with short staffing with nursing, and health professionals right now. And you think about the influx of folks going into the emergency room for basic health services. And then the mental health side, as you mentioned, the mental health services are so important. So if those services are continued to eradicate, you're going to have mental health folks going into the medical facility as well. A lot of them will fill our jails back up, as has happened in the past. And so those are real life issues that will impact our communities in various ways, Art. And so, those are some decisions we're going to have to make together, whether you're a Democrat or Republican. You got to think about, the vitality of our communities moving forward. We got to think about decisions we're making today. They're not just for today. These decisions, and this is my mindset, this is my view. The decisions that we make and I want to make are for future.
Right.
There's some that are right now, but the majority of our decisions are for 20, 30 years, 40, 50 years down the road. That's smart planning, right? And so we got to think ahead, is my point.
All right, hang on one more segment, and then we'll let you go. We're talking to State Representative Amos O'Neill, and we will be back with Amos after these notes.
Lehman's Green Apple Bar.
All right, back with you for one final segment with State Representative Amos O'Neill. And Amos, first of all, thanks for hanging around today and chatting with us. And my mind just went blank. I had something I was going to ask you, and now I can't. Oh, I don't remember now. Good. Let's
next time, then.
Yeah, I will. Let's talk. Talk a little bit about the dam rebuilding in the Great Lakes Bay region. The state put up some money for that. Are we done with it now? I mean, is Four Lakes ready to build and finish, and they have the money they need?
Yeah, I think all the money's there. I think the process. I was up that way. I went up to visit a facility up past Everett. That's way up. And I passed there. You could see this trickling of the water going through. When you get there in Coleman, and those dams are just so important to the redevelopment of that area and the families that have made all those investments in their properties and things like that. So I think we just got to safeguard for future. Again, talking about future, build into place, making sure that this never ever happens again anywhere. That's where infrastructure funds are so important for us to consider always, because, when things happen, they happen in a devastating way. And it takes so long to get those things back online that failed us based on our lack of investment. And so that's what you're seeing now. And so, I think all of us are aware of how important it is. And just even look at the ice storm we just had up in the UP a few months ago. And so we're fighting right now to get the funds, the federal funds that we need to support those families. Yeah. Again, we made a major investment from the state, on appropriations. We appropriated $100 million, to support the families up in the upper UP area up north in terms of that ice storm. And they're still reeling right now today from it. And so we got to fight to get the money from the feds to help us, with all of the needs that are necessary for those families.
I remember what I was going to ask you too. I read a story, I think it was last week, that the Republicans, and I cannot imagine where their heads were when they said this, they were proposing to reduce the state police budget because they don't like the director. And I'm going, what are they talking about? Are they nuts?
Well, Art, unfortunately, they did. that budget, in their rendition, my colleague's rendition of the House budget, it does reduce the state police budget significantly. And so, we remember we had this conversation about all these folks who were talking about defunding the police and all that, which is ludicrous. And I'm really embarrassed by it, to be honest with you. Didn't have anything to do with it, but I'm embarrassed that we would even do that. I mean, if there's some concerns you have with the leadership, then deal with it. But don't punish our law enforcement community like this to say, okay, we're going to cut your budget because, I don't know the rationale behind it. I don't want to speculate, but I would never do that. I've never done that. Even when I was first running, people said, well, you're going to do, I said, I think I was one of the only candidates at the time. I said, I would not, I'm not doing that. And I caught flack for it because there was a lot of stuff going on in the community, et cetera. But I stood up for our law enforcement community, and I said I will never, ever think about defunding our law enforcement community.
And the thing about it is the Republicans traditionally are the ones who are against defunding. And now they come up with this harebrained scheme because they don't like Grady. And I'm going, their heads are in the sand. I can't imagine it. Yeah. I hope, I can only hope that when the two sides sit down, Democrats and Republicans, Senate and House, that goes away.
I'm sure it will, because there's no way that I know the Senate's going to stand with that, and I know the governor's not going to do it. But just the fact that you would even put that out there, I don't have the words, to describe, the feelings. And so what does that say to the law enforcement community? For, like you said, if that were me doing that or Democrats, so they would have us, they would run us out of town.
Yeah, exactly. It just seems
knocking at my front yard, I'm just saying, just facetiously. But Yeah.
It just seems so contrary. I mean,
Yeah.
it shocked me. That's why I brought it up, because when I read it, I went, no, it can't be right.
Yeah.
And the more I read, the more I said, oh my goodness.
No, you don't want to play with that. You know, you don't want to use